So there have been plenty of strikes on the train network and industrial disputes involving the RMT. Lots of ones with Westminster have been continuing for a very, very long time, as in through Rail Delivery Group and Network Rail, that were solved earlier on last year and over the Christmas period this year as well. We have an interim agreement with Rail Delivery Group and the RMT, stopping strike action across the majority of railways. But there was still some potential strike action in an industrial dispute between Transport for London and the RMT over things like tube strikes. Whilst the discussions between the Conservative government and plenty of unions, including the RMT and ASLEF, have been very intractable, people like Mark Harper have been very reticent to actually bother getting to the table to even negotiate, or undermining negotiations between Rail Delivery Group or Network Rail and the RMT. In London, it's a different story. In London, where the main negotiator is Sadiq Khan, in terms of what TfL's personal mandate is in terms of solving the industrial dispute, these strikes, which were potentially going to happen, have been undermined or were called off because an agreement has been reached very, very quickly. So people in London are not going to have to deal with as many train strikes as they are elsewhere, although to be fair, agreements have been had in devolved governments as well. Interesting how it's Westminster that is always the problem with these things. Boris Johnson, friend of the show, has just done an article in The Telegraph who is saying that without any sense of irony, the caving of Sadiq Khan to the trade unions over TfL strikes is a foretaste of a Labour government, in that we should be warned of a future Labour government in which negotiations with trade unions happens and there isn't industrial action that impacts people's commute to work. Apparently this is a bad thing. Apparently it's bad when you solve industrial disputes with pay deals. Like, does Boris Johnson think that everybody in the country hates unions as much as he does? Does he think that everybody in the country, the thing that they hate the most about public sector strikes is the idea these people are going to get paid more, and not indeed that their own personal life is being inconvenienced by not having access to a service that they previously had? There's such a gigantic level of tone deafness. It really is very funny to me. It's like, so this new Labour government where there won't be an industrial action and where these disputes get solved, which of course might not even be true. We've all seen Starmer's own personal approach to the union movement. It's been very arm's length, shall we say, and in some ways very combative. So that might not even be a truer foretaste of Labour government. But the idea that you try and smear Sadiq Khan, smear the Labour Party of which he is a member, by saying that, well, the bad thing about Labour is that they stopped the industrial action and it means that your commute to work is not going to be impacted by potential strikes, and think that that's a bad thing, just shows how completely bereft of any kind of sense of the public discourse is on this issue. I'm sure most people in London are incredibly happy to know that strike action is going to be avoided because they don't want to have their days impacted by industrial action. What's interesting as well is that the line from a Conservative, the line from a right-winger on this, would very specifically be, well, now our taxes are going to have to go up. Now our payments are going to have to, the government are going to have to go up to be able to pay for all of these new pay deals, all of these increases in pay, even though inflation's gone up, so the money's worth less, and the tax take will be more because that rises with inflation. But what's interesting as well is that gets completely undermined in that not only does Sadiq Khan have the budget specifically to be able to instantly ensure that industrial action doesn't happen on the underground between TfL and the RMT, he's also got money left over to reinstitute free school meals for yet another year off the back of the increase in his revenue from business rates. Again, interestingly enough, this isn't Labour policy. They have their free breakfast clubs, which is not a terrible policy, but given that Sadiq Khan can do free school meals for primary school kids, Lutfur Rahman, he can do free school meals for secondary school kids as well. Free school meals going on plenty parts of the country, and people do like free school meals, and they are shown to be very beneficial. Breakfast clubs, beneficial too, but you can, of course, do both of those things. Yet, free school meals not being considered, in fact, completely ruled out by Labour Party leader Sir Keir Starmer. And also, this shows that there's no huge strap that's constraining the London budgets, meaning that increases in pay for RMT staff is therefore going to mean reduced budgets elsewhere or increased taxes elsewhere, because he's still got the budget surplus to be able to then actually do the free school meals for yet another year, whilst he only planned to do it for one. He's extending the scheme even further because he has even more revenue available. The coffers are full enough for him to do both of those things. So the right-wing attacks don't work, and he is being more left-wing than Keir Starmer is. There's no difficult decisions here for Sadiq Khan. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can have your cake and eat it too. And it's why I've been at least somewhat complimentary to Sadiq Khan over the course of his period as London Mayor. Because I think, despite my misgivings over the way he treated Jeremy Corbyn, he's been progressive on social issues. He's been good at negotiating with the unions. He's been good at building council houses. I did a video about that a couple of months back. And on terms of fiscal policy, he's very progressive and far more progressive than the current Labour Party are on that. And he called for a ceasefire before Keir Starmer did as well. So he's really showing up the current Labour leadership by being better on them on basically every issue on this, whilst also making rightoids mad. One of the rightoids that he has made mad is yet another friend of the show, and that is Mike Graham, the concrete grower himself, who literally slams Sadiq Khan for caving into the rail bosses. And I'm like, do you just not use the tube, Mike? I know you live in London. Do you not use the tube? Are you not grateful for the fact that there's going to be no strikes? It'll be interesting to see what he says is bad about this.
Last night, at the 11th hour, in the final minute of the 11th hour to be precise, London's Mayor Sadiq Khan stepped in to the long-running dispute between the RMT Rail Union and Transport for London. Tube trains were due to be cancelled for the entirety of this week, leaving millions of commuters stranded and forced to either work from home or struggle in through hours and hours of traffic jams. But just minutes before the strike was due to start, Sadiq announced the strike was off because he'd found some extra money from somewhere. Quite how much remains unclear, but we all know where that somewhere is, of course. It's from you and me, given that
the budget surplus, that same budget surplus that we've just seen is being paid for school meals for another year when they only plan to do it for one and they've extended it for 2. That's called a budget surplus, right? They've not, what tax increases are these? Can you point to them, Mike? And again, most people are very happy for their tax money to go and pay for things like people who run their trains and not indeed people in CEOs or shareholders who are taking loads of money out of things like the rail network for doing very little work.
Extended London ULEZ fees and fines are bringing in hundreds of millions of pounds to the Khan coffers. It's probably not going to be too hard to work out just where the cash is coming from. But it's a bad look, isn't it? Because all that Khan's intervention has proven is that he will bow to the will of the powerful union bosses. And I mean, what happens the next time?
I mean, there's no strike action. You literally started this bit about Sadiq Khan by saying, well, the strikes have been called off. All of this doomsaying about the potential impact of strike and industrial action on how people would get to work or whether they'd be forced to work from home, all this doomsaying that you were saying. And that's not happening now. That's a good thing. People's lives not interrupted because Sadiq Khan intervened. Yay! Yay for Sadiq. More pay for rail workers and no strike action. Isn't it wonderful? Love it. Miles all around.
They threatened to strike. The odious Mick Lynch is already boasting that the extra money being made available is going to be a game changer when it comes to urgent negotiations for the future. Well, I think we should be told under whose authority Khan is operating. After all, this is the guy who...
His authority. He's the mayor of London. It's literally his job, Mike.
Promised 0 strike days during his last election campaign. And since getting in, we've had to suffer 130 strikes. That's right, 130. Now it's clear he's in the pocket of the extreme left. There can only be worse to come.
Yes, the extreme left of people who want a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. There's this extreme left position of people being paid fairly and compensated fairly for their labour. I mean, if you want to call that extreme left, go ahead. All it'll do is bring people closer to my side of the argument. The more you say all of these good things are hard left, the more people will realise, oh, well, maybe the hard left aren't really that bad at the end of the day.
All this while London gets ever more dangerous, ever more expensive, more difficult to get around. It really is time to get this overpaid, overbearing, self-aggrandising mayor replaced by someone who cares about our great capital city and all the people living and working in it, not just the ones he gets to vote for him.
I mean, most people vote for him. Like, he continually gets huge majorities in terms of polling against people like Susan Hall. Yeah, so he is indeed governing for most people because most people literally do vote for him. And it's going to be first past the post next time anyway. And he's still looking like to get the majority regardless if he first past the post. At current polling levels, he's polling at 50% in, Mike. So yeah, he's governing for most of London here. And on top of that, right, you say, oh, well, all of this is going to come from ULEZ charges. Okay, well, good thing the strikes have been called off, because if you want to avoid your ULEZ charge, just hop on the tube, mate. There's no strikes anymore. You got the tube to use if you want to avoid your ULEZ charge. Incredible that he can make something that people genuinely think is good, higher wages and no industrial action, make it seem to be this kind of career-ending nonsense that is a damning indictment on the mayoralty of Sadiq Khan. And like I said, as much as I love Zoe Garbett from the Green Party, the party of which I'm a member, first past the post in the mayoral election has kind of screwed up the way in which that I would advise people to vote. And I think if on Sadiq Khan's record on council housing, new council housing, buying free housing to make it council housing, free school meals, things like LGBTQ rights and a ceasefire, all of these things, I think it's well worth supporting Sadiq Khan in his re-election effort. If anything, to make this guy mad, to make Mike Graham seething with rage, I think it's worth doing so. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership. It's just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.